Good morning and welcome. My name is Kahari Kenyatta, and I have the honor of serving as the president of the Student Bar Association here at New York University School of Law. On behalf of the Student Bar Association, the European Legal Society, and the broader NYU law community, I'm delighted to welcome you to today's program, Voices of Belarus, Human Rights, International Advocacy, and the Future of Democracy. Before we begin today's program, I'd like to take a moment to recognize those whose efforts made this event possible. First, we are all beneficiaries of the dedication of Anna Matsiulskaya, Louise Hott, and Aidan Woodis, members of the European Legal Society here at NYU, whose leadership and initiative were essential to bringing this event to life. We are also grateful for the support of the German Marshall Fund, the Jean Monnet Center for International and Regional Economic Law and Justice, and the Partizanka Foundation. We are humbled by your support and generosity, and we also extend a welcome to our guests from the United Nations Permanent Missions. Now, without further ado, we are deeply honored to be joined by Mrs. Sviatlana Tsikhanouskaya, leader of the Belarusian Democratic Movement. Tsikhanouskaya's story began when she entered the race for president in 2020 after her husband was arrested for voicing his own presidential aspirations. Belarus's autocratic leader, Alexander Lukashenko, dismissed Tsikhanouskaya's candidacy, suggesting that a woman could not become president. Nonetheless, she united and successfully led the Democratic Coalition. Though forced into exile at the conclusion of the election, whose results were widely rejected by the international community, her courage inspired unprecedented peaceful protests across Belarus. Tsikhanouskaya's tireless advocacy for human rights and for democratic governance have earned international recognition. She was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize and is the recipient of both the European Parliament's Sakharov Prize and the Charlemagne Prize, among others. Thank you for being with us, Mrs. Tsikhanouskaya. Joining her on the panel this morning are Mr. Franek Wieczorka and Ms. Anna Matsiulskaya. Mr. Wieczorka serves as Chief of Staff to Mrs. Tsikhanouskaya, guiding the communications and diplomatic strategy of her political movement. A journalist, researcher, and former creative director at Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, he studied disinformation and media control by authoritarian states and has worked to promote democratic values and debate through access to media. With degrees from Warsaw University in Poland and American University in Washington, D.C., Mr. Wieczorka's advocacy has shaped the international strategy of the Belarusian democratic movement and helped energize the home front. Ms. Matsiulskaya is a Belarusian-born Polish lawyer and human rights advocate, currently completing her LLM right here at NYU School of Law. After bearing witness to human rights violations following Belarus's 2020 election, Matsiulskaya was moved to create the Partizanka Foundation, an NGO founded to assist Belarusian migrants and asylum seekers in Poland. To date, Matsiulskaya's NGO has supported more than 17,000 Belarusian and Ukrainian refugees and political prisoners, and her leadership has twice earned her invitations to appear at the World Economic Forum in Davos. Thank you both for joining us today. Moderating today's discussion is Professor Rick Pildes, Sudler Family Professor for Constitutional Law here at NYU. One of the nation's leading scholars on democracy law and election law, Professor Pildes teaches the law of democracy and seminars on topics such as the presidential powers under the US Constitution. Recently, he co-launched the NYU Law Democracy Project, an initiative aimed at understanding the challenges facing American democracy in context with parallel struggles facing other Western democracies. Thank you, Professor, for moderating and being here for this important conversation. And finally, we are privileged to welcome Mr. Serhiy Tsikhanouskaya, Belarusian opposition politician, public figure, and symbol of resistance to the Lukashenko regime. Founder of the civic movement and media project, A Country for Life, Tsikhanouskaya grew a massive following in just 2 years, became one of the most prominent critics of the Belarusian regime, and was known for advocating for free and fair elections, an end to repression, respect for human rights and dignity, and sovereignty of Belarus. After announcing his intention to run for president in 2020, he was arrested and barred from running. And now, after 5 years in detention and following his recent release, just in June of this year, we're so grateful that Mr. Tsikhanouski is here with us today to open our event with some reflections from his experience. So please join me in welcoming our distinguished guests and panelists. Thank you.
Дорогие друзья, рад вас всех здесь видеть и перейду сразу к делу, мне поможет переводчик.
Dear friends, I'm happy to see you here. I'll get straight to the point.
Я говорил сразу после своего освобождения, что лукашенковская система исполнения наказаний напоминает сталинский ГУЛАГ, как мы его знаем из истории.
I was telling straight from after my release that the Lukashenko system of crime punishment is pretty much the same as the Stalin Gulag.
То, что это действительно так, подтверждают и другие недавно освобожденные политзаключенные. Пытки, изоляция, издевательства.
This fact is stated and proven by the newly released political prisoners. Torture, isolation, all kinds of abuse.
Но беда еще в другом. Сама юридическая система, само делопроизводство остались все те же со времен ГУЛАГа.
However, this is not the only issue. The entire judicial system is the case fabrication, are the remnants of the Gulag regime.
Независимой юстиции не существует, все подчинено государству и его политическим нуждам. А нужда у власти только одна – остаться у власти.
There is no independent justice. The law is dictated by the government and is serving its needs. And there's only one goal of that enterprise, is to maintain that power.
Поэтому судебная система и система исполнения наказаний изначально созданы для борьбы с инакомыслящими. Теми, кто, по мнению власти, посягает на государственное устройство.
That's why the judicial system and the sentence execution were tailored to prosecute the dissidents, the ones who, according to the regime, are threatening the current state of things in the government.
А в борьбе за власть, с их точки зрения, все средства хороши. Как сказал мне лично сам Лукашенко, а что ты думал, политика – грязное дело.
And when it comes to staying in power, all means justify the end. I was told personally by President Lukashenko, what did you think? Politics is a messy business.
Это значит, что в ход идут все допустимые им инструменты манипуляции правосудия, начиная с действий так называемых правоохранительных органов. Они руководствуются принципом «иногда не до законов».
That means the regime will use all the available tools to manipulate justice, starting from the actions of the so-called law enforcement. They abide by the basic principle that sometimes laws can be bent when it's inconvenient.
Представляете, он сказал это на совещании со своими прокурорами.
Lukashenko told that during a press conference with his prosecutors.
Против меня было организовано сразу несколько провокаций. Меня задерживали на сутки, чтобы не допустить моей регистрации кандидатом в президенты. Позже в Гродно меня арестовывали в результате потасовки, инсценированной самими работниками МВД и их агенткой. Потом в мой дом подбросили какие-то $900 тысяч. И даже не в мой, а в дом моей матери.
Okay. Several provocations were launched against me. I was detained for a day to prevent my registration as a presidential candidate. Later in Grodno, I was detained as a result of a scrap that was staged by the law enforcement agents. Later, $900,000 were planted in my house, not even in my house, in my mother's house.
И так далее. Следствие даже не заботилось о том, чтобы предоставить доказательства против меня. Ведь приговор суда был заранее ясен. Мое дело было сфабриковано, многих своих подельников я никогда до этого не встречал и не знал лично. Опять же, все средства для власти хороши, чтобы убрать неугодного им человека.
And it went on. The investigation by the prosecution team did not even bother to present proof against me. The sentence had been decided long before. My case had been fabricated. I knew none of my, quote, accomplices, end quote, personally. Again, any means justify removing of an inconvenient dissident.
А когда вы попадаете в саму тюрьму, вы оказываетесь в полной власти тюремщиков. И они сразу же начинают вам мстить. Их цель – сломать вас, чтобы вы уже никогда не подумали оказать сопротивление системе.
When you're in prison, you're under a total control of the prison personnel, and they start taking their revenge. The goal is to break you mentally, so you never decide to challenge the regime again.
Я уже рассказывал, что я перенес. Одиночная камера, очень маленькое помещение, постоянные провокации, холод, недоедание. Никаких писем, контактов с внешним миром, ничего. Режим инкоммуникада – это пытка, причем не только для заключенных, но и для их родных и близких.
I've already told several times what I underwent in prison. Solitary confinement, tight space, provocations, cold, hunger. No letters or any contact with the outside world, nothing. The total incommunicado mode. It is a type of torture, not only for the inmate, but also for his family.
Даже если вы не инкоммуникада, а простой политический, других заключенных карают за то, что они общаются с вами. Если вы в списке так называемых террористов, вам запрещено получать передачи, деньги, покупать предметы первой необходимости. Медицинская помощь отсутствует. В таких условиях люди теряют здоровье очень быстро и выходят на свободу инвалидами.
Even if you're just a regular political prisoner, the other inmates are not allowed to communicate with you under punishment. If you're on the list of so-called terrorists, you are denied parcels, money, or buying anything from the commissary. Medical help is withheld. People get sick very fast in these conditions, and when they're released, are often crippled.
Все эти практики не должны иметь места в 21 веке. И когда в Беларуси победит демократия, это нечеловеческое наследие сталинизма должно исчезнуть.
All of this cannot exist in the 21st century. When Belarus becomes free and democratic, this barbaric legacy must disappear.
Сейчас в руках режима по-прежнему остается более 1300 заложников. Я благодарю президента Трампа за то, что он начал переговоры за их освобождение. И я надеюсь, что это принесет результат. Много человек уже вышли на волю. Нам нужно требовать освобождения остальных и прекращения репрессий, чтобы перестали арестовывать и осуждать людей по политическим мотивам, так как за это время статус политзаключенных получило больше людей, чем вышло на свободу.
The regime still holds over 1,300 political prisoners. I am thankful to President Trump for negotiating their release. I hope these negotiations will be successful. A lot of people have been released. We need to demand the release of the rest and put in an end to repressions. We need to stop detaining and arresting people based on their political opinion. Lately, more people have been detained than released.
Мой случай особенный. Мне крупно повезло. За меня боролась моя любимая жена. Ее голос не замолкал. Она начинала и заканчивала свои международные выступления с проблемой белорусских заложников. Я бесконечно благодарен ей за это.
My case is unique. I was lucky. My wife fought for me and on my behalf. She never stopped.
Мы живем в переходное время, мы с болью наблюдаем девальвацию Международного уголовного суда. Такие важные для мирового сообщества структуры, как ООН и МУС, теряют авторитет и не исполняют своих функций. А ведь еще недавно большинство белорусов мечтали увидеть Лукашенко и Путина в Гааге.
Dear friends, we live in a transitional time. We're facing the decline of the International Criminal Court. Such important entities as the UN and the International Criminal Court are losing ground and losing their functionality. Not too long ago, the majority of Belarusians were eager to see Lukashenko and Putin in Gaag.
Преступления против народа, пытки и убийства политзаключенных, убийства демонстрантов не должны иметь срока давности. Я верю, что настанет день, и Лукашенко будут судить справедливым судом. И это будет в новой Беларуси. Свободу политзаключенным! Живе Беларусь!
The crimes against the people, torture, and murders of the political prisoners and should not have the statute of limitation. I believe there will become a day where Lukashenko will be held to justice, and that's going to happen in New Belarus. Release all political prisoners. Long live Belarus.
Thank you. Thank you.
So that was very powerful to listen to. It's just an incredible honor for me to share the stage with people who have been fighting for democracy in some of the most repressive circumstances in the world. As you just heard, not just fighting for democracy, but putting their bodies on the line for democracy in some of the most difficult circumstances in the world. We in the United States tend to take for granted the institutions that have been built up over more than 200 years, an independent judiciary, the rule of law. Sometimes it's easy to take those for granted, not realize what tremendous achievements they are established over long periods of time. But when you're reminded of what it is like to lack those kinds of institutions, hopefully it reminds us all of how important the rule of law, an independent judicial system, free and fair elections are. So for the American audience, the students, and some of the people on the live stream, I think maybe we should start with just a little bit more context about how we got to this moment in Belarus. My understanding is that Lukashenko has been president for over 30 years now. So from the very first election Belarus had after independence, he's been in that office. Can you describe some about the 2020 election, what we know about the fraudulent nature of that election, why the international community is so united in the view that the election was stolen, and the protests that resulted in the aftermath? We'll just give people a little bit more context. Yeah.
Okay, thank you first of all to all the students and all participants who decided to come to this discussion. For me, as a leader of the Democratic Forces, it's so important, to deliver Belarusian story to broader societies, because it's for us it's our fight, but for you it's like lesson that you have to cherish what you have, because it's really easy to lose and so difficult to get it back. Also, I will correct you a little bit, because Lukashenko is not president of Belarus. He lost his legitimacy back in 2020 when Belarusians won the elections, and for the first time in our history we managed to prove this through alternative count system. It was digital decision, because all elections before were also fraudulent, but we cannot prove this. In 2020, we have the evidence that Lukashenko lost, and we are grateful to international society, European countries, USA, Canada, UK, all over the world, democratic countries, that they till now don't recognize Lukashenko as legitimate, and even after 2025 so-called elections, he didn't manage to renew his official legitimacy. So we have to name the things what they are, because sometimes it might be confusion. So, you heard a little bit the story of 2020 from my beloved husband. I have to say that our prize in 2020 was really unexpected, because it wasn't prepared. It's, we didn't have structures, we didn't have parties, because in democratic countries, party is opposing to another party. In Belarusian situation, it was people who are prized, from the hearts. We said enough to Lukashenko regime. It was such a wonderful moment of unity of people. It was such a wonderful moment when people could see that, look, I'm not alone who is against the system, because all these years, Lukashenko built this repressive system that threatened people. You could discuss politics only in the kitchens, behind the doors. And now people saw, look, I'm not alone. There are millions around me who are of the same opinion. And for the first time, we saw huge queues to leave a signature for the candidates, huge queues nearby prisons where first prisoners have been detained, including my husband. He was actually maybe the first or among the first who have been detained in 2020. So, and I stepped instead of my husband. He didn't manage to give his documents. I did out of love to him, out of love to my family and to my country, of course. And I know that Belarusians at that moment, they didn't vote for me personally. They voted for changes. And I promised to Belarusian people that I understand I'm not an experienced person. I'm used to be, I was housewife. I did it very unexpectedly, but I promised that I'm not going to participate in free and fair elections. My task will be to, together with Belarusians, to organize this election. So, and this promise helped us to unite. We didn't feel competitiveness. We supported each other, and people, other leaders, and just devoted all our strength, all our capacity, to our goal: organize, stop repressions, and organize free and fair elections. So maybe it's, from my point of view, if anybody can add something, yes, please.
And my understanding is the independent audit or analysis of the election showed you winning with something like 70% of the vote. Is that correct? A very, very strong majority voted for you.
Yeah, it was definitely over than 60%. We cannot say concrete numbers, but for sure that it was more than 60, yeah.
And then what happened?
As all dictators, Lukashenko refused to step down, and he unleashed the most brutal terror our country have ever experienced. Because in our history, almost every elections were met by opposition uprisings. They were not so massive, and Lukashenko every time, suppressed this uprising, put people in prisons. We always had political prisoners in Belarus. So, and now he did the same. He made me to leave the country next day after elections. And it's a usual practice, actually, of dictators to expel leaders, from the country, and they think that, society will come down. But of course, regime is calculated, because in our case, it wasn't about one person or one leader. It was about, people who dared to say no to dictatorship. And since 9th of August 2020, several months in a row, people went to the hugest demonstrations our country saw. Millions of people on the streets. And of course, the brutality of the regime also was unprecedented. People were shot on the streets. People were severely abused and beaten and raped in prisons. And, this disaster started. Disaster that is continuing till now, because for 5 years passed, and every day in Belarus, 10, 15 people are detained. Every day. It's not over now. So maybe I'll stop here, because they can talk endlessly.
Well, and we do want to hear you. What's it like to lead a democratic opposition in exile, for all of you, for a country that is, facing these kind of repressive circumstances? What can be done, if anything, from within Belarus? What's it like to try to organize an opposition from outside? How much support are you getting from the international community?
Am I supposed to answer all the questions?
No, you can answer the first, and then I'll turn to Franek.
The first was
what's it like trying to lead a democratic opposition in exile, faced with a repressive government like this?
So of course it's not easy. People who left the country, and at the moment it's more than 500,000 of Belarusians left Belarus after 2020 because of repressions. We people, stateless people. Our state is seized by a dictator, and we have to organize somehow ourselves. all our media in Belarus have been ruined, all our civil society were liquidated. So Lukashenko, erased everything the regime wanted to erase. But Belarusian people, so wonderful. We managed to restore, media managed to restore their broadcasting from abroad. Human rights defending organizations, civil society organizations started to work from outside. We built alternative institutions of power, like United Transitional Cabinet and Coordination Council, like a proto-parliament. We started to build government in exile. And for 5 years, we managed to strengthen agents of democratic forces to such extent that from the side of our democratic partners, there is no question, who is legitimate. They perceived us as legitimate representatives of Belarusian people. We formalized relationship with countries. We have strategic dialogue with the USA, Canada, UK. We in formal relationship with European Union and European Parliament. Is the first time, I suppose, maybe Frana can correct me, it's really unprecedented things that are happening, that countries are engaged not with governments like who seized the power, but with the democratic movement.
I mean, this reminds me of World War II, where you have governments in exile in the United Kingdom after the Nazis have occupied various countries in Europe. It's unbelievable that we are in circumstances like that today. Frana, could you say something about the kind of support you are getting from international institutions or foreign governments? Are they doing enough? What more can be done?
We actually trying to learn from exiled governments during and after Second World War, which existed, and Poland, Lithuania, Baltic states issued their documents in exile, for example, established relationship. But it was before UN system has been formed. And right now, many things changed. Everything is regulated, and we basically do not fit current mechanisms. And for UN, for example, it's very difficult, to deal with us because de facto they do recognize, they do support us. They want Svetlana Tikhanovskaya to be present at the assembly, but de jure, legally, they cannot find a seat, let's say, in the General Assembly plenary hall. And the same with strategic dialogues. Basically, strategic dialogues between the US and Albania, Montenegro, India, China exists, and only one is with democratic Belarus, which is not de jure state, but de facto party, the party. And they want to work with us. So they establish, they invent, they have to be creative in order to work with us because they do want to help and they see usefulness of this cooperation. So most of our achievements are done de facto, not de jure, like this international visits, recognition. In every country, Madam President receives the reception as president, with all official status, with this motorcades, etc. But of course, we cannot call it state visit because we don't have states, our state is seized. So it's very interesting how also international community is challenged and also is being creative. Because in 2020, we heard, oh, don't create government in exile, it will be very difficult to deal. But when war has started, everyone say, create as soon as possible, because it's for a long time. It's for a long time, create and do, and we will help Belarus to become free and independent.
That was one of the questions I wanted to ask. So since you brought it up, how has the Ukraine war, the Russia-Ukraine war, affected your efforts with Belarus? We know that Vladimir Putin is very strongly supportive of Lukashenko, but how has the Ukraine-Russia war affected the politics and the democratic opposition for Belarus?
For Belarusian population, it became clear that they're not Russians. That this difference, that we do not support the war, we don't have imperial ambitions, it became so evident even for regular people in Belarus. And these anti-war moods are still there. Only 4.5% of Belarusians, even according to all surveys, they do support the idea of Belarusian troops engaging fully in the war. And the same about unification with Russia. Less than 5% of Belarusians want Belarus and Russia in the same state. So it strengthens national identity, national dignity, but also this feeling that we are different. This nation-building process was intensified. But the same in Ukraine, actually. Ukraine also united thanks to the threat from Putin. Putin united Ukraine, West and East, people of all political views. And similar process, maybe not so evident, not so fast, is happening in Belarus. But also we saw our dependence on Russia, Belarus' dependence on Russia, because before it was not visible. It was not visible in daily life for regular people, but in 2022, all this militarization, Russian troops on the streets, Russian flags, and pro-Russian policy of Lukashenko became so evident, and people, even nomenclatura people who are close to Lukashenko, they don't like it. Because for them, you know, independence is the value. Even for those near Lukashenko, maybe they can be okay, comfortable in the system with Lukashenko because they know how to deal with it. But when they saw the direct imminent threat to the sovereignty, the new processes started. And we see many people from nomenclatura reaching out to us and asking what's next, what we can do. Let's prepare for the next moment, because we don't want Belarus to be fully subjugated by the world. And speaking about international reaction, so in 2020, we were in the focus of attention. I would say there was always discussion on Belarus, peaceful protests, etc. But in 2022, the attention, global attention to the region increased, and Belarus became one piece of the puzzle of this big, huge crisis where all the world is watching. So maybe we became part of this bigger issue, and we try to explain right now also to American Western partners that Belarus is the part of the crisis, but it can be also part of the solution. Because if we would won in 2020, if our revolution uprising would won, the war probably would not have started at all. And this is not so evident for many people and decision makers right now in the Western world.
I just want to add about Ukraine, because you know, when the war has started, Belarusian nation discovered, you know, ourselves in a very tricky situation. When Belarus, on the one hand, became country co-aggressor, but on the other hand, you know, Belarusians were supporting Ukrainians, and it's also one of our tasks was to show to the world and to the Ukrainians, first of all, that we have to distinguish Belarusian regime and Belarusian people. We have to punish regime for becoming Putin's ally in this war, but justify Belarusian people who stopped railways that were bringing Russian military to Ukraine, our military volunteers fighting shoulder to shoulder with Ukrainians. Belarusian refugees helped Ukrainian refugees, because we know what it means, you know, to leave everything behind and, you know, escape the country. So, and we really succeeded in this. Now, everybody who knows about Belarus understand that regime is Putin's ally, Belarusian people on the side of Ukrainians and pro-European nation.
Has there been any significant change in U.S. policy or the U.S. stance towards Belarus between the Biden administration and the Trump administration? I mean, it's relatively early in the Trump administration.
Yeah.
Do you want to? No, anything about how the U.S. has been responding to the situation, and is it pretty much continuous from the Biden administration to the Trump administration, or have there been significant policy changes?
So I have to say that since 2020, we have full bipartisan support of the USA. We have caucuses for Democratic Belarus, both in Senate and Congress. And, you know, with previous administration, we have rather close relationship. I met with President Biden 3 times, I suppose. So we felt, you know, huge support. There is Belarusian Democracy Act, actually, that describes policy towards Belarus, where it's written that, you know, punishment to the regime, support of Belarusian people. Also, we got some assistance to our media, our human rights defenders from the USA. When the President Trump came to the power, we maybe have seen more transactional approach. Of course, you know, the maybe attention was decreased a little bit at the beginning, but now what is happening now is prominent. President Trump is personally involved into the process of releasing of political prisoners. We are so grateful for this, that among, I don't know, hundreds of folders on the table of President Trump, there is a folder with political prisoners of Belarus. Already 2 groups of people have been released from prisons, including my husband. General Kellogg and John Cole and also Chris Smith from State Department are dealing with Belarusian case, and we are in constant communication and coordination with them. So we encourage President Trump to continue his efforts of releasing people. We still have at least 1,300 people behind bars, and publicly President Trump demanded to release all these people. So we enormously appreciate these efforts, and I hope we'll continue to work together. Of course, there are problems on this path as well, on path of releasing of people, because Lukashenko is a criminal. You know, he made people like bargaining chips. He wants to sell less for higher price. You know, he just and our task is to make sure that President Trump, you know, his administration are not fooled by the regime, because it's ordinary behavior of Lukashenko, you know, to this wish to buy Lamborghini for 2,000 euros, you know, and there are problems from the side of the regime, because while releasing some people, they are detaining twice more. So we never know how many people are behind bars. And the second one is that people who are, you know, so-called released, they actually forcibly deported to another countries, to Lithuania in our case. So there is no choice. Either a person can stay in Belarus or cannot. And many people don't want to leave the country. Many people have, you know, old parents, for example, or some other reasons, or they just it's their land. Why Lukashenko have to force us to leave the country? And one of the last cases in the last group of release, there was one prominent, you know, person, Nikolai Statkevich. He refused to leave the country. You know, on neutral border between Belarus and Lithuania, he just went out of the American bus and said, I'm not going to leave Belarus. And he was, again, collected by KGB officers, and Nikolai Statkevich disappeared. We till now don't know where he is, but it might be more and more cases like him. People just have to have choice. And of course, we put this request to our American side for them to demand, you know, changing of behavior from Lukashenko. But again, I just have to underline, Frank may add that our priority is to release people, because it's their lives, it's a reunification of the families, but without irreversible and consistent changes in Belarus, this revolving door, you know, it will take place. And Lukashenko will take more and more and more hostages, you know, to sell them more and more expensive.
Anna, I want to turn to you to talk about what's going on with lawyers, the legal profession in Belarus. We've already heard a fair amount about the way the legal regime is being kind of dismantled, the lack of independence of courts, of course. You're very involved with the effort to sort of bring legal help to Belarus. Can you talk some about what it's like for lawyers there, what you're doing, what the prospects are for trying to restore the rule of law? That's maybe too big a question, but go ahead.
Thank you for this question. And when we're talking about the right to defense, just imagine that you're a Belarusian inside the country and you're charged for a politically motivated case, and you just basically can't find the lawyer who will represent you in the court. This is the reality which we are right now facing in the country. Because Belarusian regime are attacking Belarusian attorneys. Belarusian regime also seeing them as part of the state. And therefore, my colleagues, attorneys, they're somehow treated as a betrayer of a system. Even I know that we are limited with respect to our time, but I need to name my colleagues who was very brave, who are actually proof what does it mean actually to be a lawyer. So it's Maxim Znak, one of the brilliant Belarusian lawyers, academia professor actually in Belarusian State University. He was sentenced for 10 years of imprisonment, And right now, for 2.5 years, he is in incommunicado status. So we do not know about if he's alive or not. We don't have any news about him. But before January 2023, when we had the information about him and he write the letters, he write in a part his book, Decameron. And this book was created from many letters he sent to his friends and family. And actually you can buy this book and order it online and support his family by this. It's also Alexander Danilevich, the only Belarusian attorney who is allowed to practice as an arbitrator in sport arbitration court in Lausanne. I work with him on the cross-border issue of refugee child, which was transnationally repressed, actually. And 3 days after, I received a message that he was arrested because he initiated a public petition against war in Ukraine. It's also Yulia Yurgilevich. She is a recipient of French very well-known award, Ludovic Terrier. The first recipient of this award is Nelson Mandela. It's also Vitaly Braginets. He defended Nobel Prize winner, Alice Bilatsky. Now both of them, attorney and client, is in prison. Anastasia Lazarenko raised her child alone. Her child is with a disability, and she can't have a contact with her child and make a care of her child properly. And the last but not least, it's Alexei Borodko. He was 24 years old when he was arrested. He just started his own practice. He decided to defend the Belarusian, and he just was politically motivated case was started against him. So among lawyers who was forced actually to leave the country because they was putting together with the crimes what was charged against their clients, they was forced to leave the country. They was disbarred. It's more than 139 people who was disbarred. And we have the evidence that 4 of them was tortured while they was arrested. So we actually do not have a client attorney privilege, you know. It's just an illusion. So, and actually why I mentioned all of these names, because I think it's very important to world not forget about those brilliant professionals. And I'm actually honored to speak about them, and I understand that someone's need to do so because they're silenced right now. And therefore, we launched our today event with the professional campaign, like solidarity campaign, because you will find the postcards right near the entrance, and you could write several sentences for those very brave lawyers, like "World is not forget about you," that they're brave, and to wish them to stay strong. And at the same time, it's also part of the international, you know, focus on the attorneys, your colleagues, actually, who is suffering. I'm very happy that Sergei mentioned what is the actually conditions in Belarusian prisons. So we will send all of these postcards to Belarus to also make a sign for the colonies that we are watching for you. So please, at least, make their stay human in the prison and release those people.
So thank you for that. And my understanding is that even when political prisoners are released, and some have been released, as we've discussed, it's incredibly difficult for them to get jobs, to reintegrate. What specific sort of mechanisms are there, forms of support for them, their families? What can the international community do for people who do manage to get released? And we hope many more people will be released. Describe that situation and what might be done about that.
First of all, it's a challenge. Challenge for NGOs, challenge for the international world to how to support people who are releasing right now, because we need to to state that this is a crimes against humanity. I just would like to highlight that. And it's a violation of Rome Statute with respect to the forced deportation of those people, what already Svetlana mentioned as well. Those people just pushed out of the border, and many of them even don't have a passport. So actually, European law are not so well prepared for such situations, because European legal system expect people coming to the country with, through the borders, with passport, with visas. And those people have nothing. We have, for example, Dublin regulation, which actually very often is not, through its provisions, not see the problems of those people. Like when they have, for example, previous employee in Poland or some family members in Portugal. And therefore, right now, it's a challenge for the Belarusian opposition leaders, for the NGOs, how to create and find the solution for those people, even in a legal sense, to find a good way for them, for example, to reunite with their families in the EU. And some of the families are just reunited because, for example, in case of several people who was deported, their family stayed in Belarus. So it's a huge challenge from a legal perspective. But what is important, the basic problem, it's only PTSD, but it's not the only one. Many of them have very, very strong illness. And it actually demands from the NGO world to create such a system which will help them also with the medical issues. The conditions in Belarusian prisons is tough, as Sergei mentioned, and their health, even after 1 year of such imprisonment, it's your health is super bad. And when people are spending 3, 4, or 5 years like Sergei, it's just ruined your health. So it's actually the mixture of many aspects. So legal, psychological, medical, organizational support, finding an apartment, for example, for those people, and to create such conditions to those people to start a life from the beginning. Because actually they have nothing. Sometimes, if you can see the photos, they have only one backpack, and this is all. And those people start everything from the scratch, but also have the previous bad experience, which influenced their health. And yeah, so it's very, very challenging issue. Svetlana.
I'm just so grateful to Anna for this, for seeing this problem from the point of view of law. I'm seeing more from the political point of view. I just have to say that, of course, Belarusians who flee Belarus because of repressions face a lot of problems with documents, legalization, accommodation, so on and so forth. But we're really so grateful to the countries who are ready to help us. First of all, it's Lithuania and Poland, who are our neighbors. These two countries, they're changing their laws to help Belarusians feel more comfortable in their countries. For example, we have big issue with the passports. Embassies of the regime in different countries, they refuse, to renew Belarusian passports. And if your passport is expired, you cannot return home because you will be detained and you becoming stateless person. So Lithuania, for example, they are, and actually some other countries, they accept expired passport as valid. They issue traveling documents for people, to have possibility to travel. So they are trying to help us. They don't have to do this actually, but they're in solidarity with us. They're trying to help us, and this is really important. But of course, we're also trying to face all these challenges. We are, for example, we are working on the project Passport of New Belarus. We want to solve this issue systematically, so we proposed European institutions recognize this passport, this document of verification. It's ICAO standardized, it's biometric, so everything according to all the standards. We need political decision to recognize this, but we are moving, towards this point, hopefully. So so many repressed, so many political prisoners and families who are suffering inside the country, outside. And together with Norway, we launched International Humanitarian Fund for Repressed of Belarus. So it's a fund where all the countries and physical and individuals can contribute money to help the hostages, to help repressed people. It's also, gesture of solidarity, and it's really helpful now when this bigger group of people are released, and now we are preparing for accepting more. And so this contribution, are crucial. And many other things that are happening. Some countries are helping human rights defenders, some countries media, some countries to our national identity programs. So of course it's not enough. Of course we really not in the best situation, but I see how the countries, governments want to help us.
We want to give you all a chance to ask questions if you have questions before I ask my final question. So if anybody in the audience has a question, please raise your hand. Are we going to bring a microphone to them? Yes. I see a hand over here. It's always better for the live streaming to be using the mic.
Thank you. My name is Jasmine Cintron, and I am a master's student at NYU School for Global Affairs. I wanted to ask a little bit more about what role you all have seen traditional media or even social media now with Instagram and TikTok, the role that those tools have been used to sort of illuminate some light on the humanitarian violations happening in Belarus, or on the flip side, have they been used to sort of conceal the issues going on?
Of course, they do help to spread the information and to connect people in exile and people inside the country. Lukashenko cannot block completely because he also takes advantage of the social networks. And there is a constant competition. And right now, Russian propaganda and Lukashenko's propaganda, they're trying just to inflate, or to fulfill this social media space with their own narratives. But independent media confront with true, honest information. TikTok is the most popular social network, and the reason is very basic, actually, because it's very difficult to trace your history on TikTok. Because on other networks, when your phone is checked, you can see if KGB agent, for example, is checking. You can see all the videos, all the channels you were watching or looking if you didn't delete the history, and most of people don't do this. And on TikTok, you're always recommended the random stuff. And
sorry for interrupting. I have to add that all the free media are recognized as extremist or terrorist in Belarus. So that's why people who are reading this news might be detained for just reading or commenting. Sorry.
No, it's right. It's very dangerous to read, to subscribe to independent channels because you can be jailed. So all media are extremist formation. To be subscribed on YouTube channels, which is extremist, makes you extremist. And you can go to jail for that. So people are looking for safe ways to communicate, to read, to consume content. And social networks are very helpful in that. But of course, propaganda is also using that. Sometimes a state sends requests to YouTube and Meta, Alphabet to block independent media or activist channels, saying that they are extremists, please block. And it takes time for us to connect with Alphabet or Meta people. It's not the right request. Don't accept it, please unblock it. And just a few months ago, we had the case with Madam President account. It was blocked by official request on Belarus territory, and we had to find manager of TikTok to unblock it because it's not reasonable for them to do this. And of course, we ask foreign governments to support work of independent journalists, media, content creators, influencers. There was big support from USAID before until this year, but now we really depend on European Union support for independent media. Unfortunately, they cannot monetize because they are extremists and terrorists, and they can rely only on the external funding.
Other questions from the audience? Yes. Up front here.
Thank you. My name is Yuri Gibladze. I'm the head of human rights and rule of law at iSense, an NGO led by Belarusians and based in Warsaw. And I'd like to, since we are in the law school and there's a lot of legal people here, I'd like to highlight the importance of ending impunity and bringing perpetrators to justice. So this probably should be parallel tracks while the US administration negotiates in the transactional manner the release of political prisoners, saving their lives. The European states should take much more active steps in working with the International Criminal Court, working with the International Court of Justice, using the universal jurisdiction principle in their national justice systems, so that there is indeed a sustainable and irreversible path to a future transition in Belarus. So we don't repeat the mistakes of the previous rounds of crackdowns when sanctions were lifted, restrictions were gone, after prisoners were released, but there was no changes in the political system. Secondly, very quickly, since the regime completely eradicated, as Svetlana has pointed at, the opposition inside the country, the media, civil society, and others, and puts the leaders in incommunicado detention, so to completely deny them any opportunity to speak up. The regime started to engage in transnational repression very actively. Belarus is now leading internationally as the perpetrators of transnational repression, and the international community is not prepared to react. So there is a whole range of recommendations that we have developed to states and intergovernmental organizations on measures to counter transnational repression. Most finally, today is the birthday of our dear friend Ales Bialiatski, the recipient of Nobel Peace Prize and the leading Belarusian human rights defender. And I would like us to think of him, to send him our greetings and congratulations. He's in very tough conditions, convicted for 10 years. And by giving him and all other political prisoners a round of applause, I think we can send our support to them.
Let me turn to my final question. We only have a little bit of time left, but I wanted to ask each of you if you can say sort of briefly, what gives you hope? What gives you hope right now?
For me personally, it's about resilience and endurance of Belarusian people, because in this constant fear for your lives, for lives of maybe relatives who are still in Belarus, without resources, without maybe even visible like help and very effective help of democratic world, people continue to resist. Belarusians inside the country under constant pressure, they are providing us information what is happening. They are making small acts of sabotage inside the country. They are leaking us, some very precious information. For example, how sanctions are circumvented, or how regime is earning money on the war in Ukraine. Those who are in exile, we can be more vocal, and also living in exile is also not, wonderful life. We have many challenges and difficulties, but people are not giving up as well. People uniting into organizations, into associations, and keeping Belarus high on the agenda. Our wonderful diasporas all over the world doing fantastic job, keeping Belarus on the agenda in their countries, helping Belarusians in need, donating to our refugees, donating to our volunteers who are fighting in Ukraine, donating to our veterans. So for 2 days after last release, only for 2 days, Belarusian people donated about 100,000 euros for ex-political prisoners. So fantastic people. And I see that despite, these 5 years, many people might lose hope, or it's or give up because just don't understand when it will end. They continue to work for Belarus, for the children, actually, to live in the country without fear, without waiting their daddies or mothers from prison, and without the fear of the war. So really appreciate and honored by Belarusian nation.
Franek, do you have anything to add about what gives you hope?
Everything was said, but I think that for Belarus, this 5 years was a big challenge. We survived as the movement. We didn't win yet our country, but if we passed these 5 years, we are still on the agenda. People still speak about Belarus. It gives me hope. And also, after these 3 years of General Assembly discussions, I see the unity around Ukraine. And it seems that this Ukraine's position is winning finally, even in the global south, in many countries which were never connected to the region. And statements and meetings and work of Ukrainian leadership is just amazing. And I think that this understanding of the region, of Ukraine, of Belarus, it will help to stop Russia. So this naivety about Russia, that we can deal with Russia, we can work with Putin, I think it disappeared already. And it gives the chance for bolder and firmer steps and actions from the Western community.
And Anna, what gives you hope?
For me personally, it's the situation that I'm not alone, and I know that. If you guys supports me, how I can stop. And to be honest, I was so surprised, but in a positive way, when I just proposed to organize the meeting on Belarusian topic here at NYU. And I met so many positive words and actually a lot of efforts from my colleagues. And therefore, I would like to personally thanks for Luis, to Kahari, to Aidan, which makes this possible. And yeah. And as we discussed already with Franek, it's actually the first visit of Svetlana Tsikhanovskaya in top U.S. university, which was organized by student initiative. So it's our honor, and we are proud of that. Yep.
Well, let me just say in closing, Madam President and Franek and Anna and Sergey, we are humbled, we are awed by your bravery, your commitment, your courage. It's really a model for people fighting for democracy everywhere, and a powerful reminder of how valuable democracy is, how fragile it is, and how important it is. So thank you so much for everything you do and for being present here today at NYU.